his name would eventually be found. How he died never would. 74 years earlier, on a beach outside Adelaide, a man sat down against a seawall and never stood up again. A cigarette rests unlit on his collar, half smoked. It hasn't fallen. Nothing about the way he was found makes sense. Every tag in his clothes has been cut out, every label gone. In his pocket, hidden in a seam nobody was meant to find, a single word torn from a book. Finished. For 74 years, that's all anyone had. A stranger, a scrap of paper, and a sentence written in a code nobody could break. Then, in 2022, a team of scientists said they finally knew his name. They were right about the name. They still don't know anything else. And the closer you look, the stranger that gets. Saturday, the 1st of December, 1948, Somerton Park, a beach south of Adelaide. He's found reclined against the seawall, dressed for winter in a warm country. Suit, tie, polished shoes, no wallet, no identification, no struggle. In his pockets, a bus ticket, an unused train ticket, a comb, a pack of chewing gum, a box of matches almost full, a packet of cigarettes. The expensive brand hidden inside a cheaper brand's box, and nothing that says who he is. Every clothing label has been removed, cut out one at a time. His shoes are clean, recently polished. On a man who supposedly walked here. Everyone who examined him agreed on one thing. Something about this death was wrong. Nobody could agree on what. The autopsy finds his stomach engorged with blood, his spleen 3 times its normal size. His last meal, a pasty, eaten hours before he died. The pathologist says plainly, this was not a natural death. A professor testifying at the inquest points to a class of poison, the kind that stops a heart in minute doses and in 1948 was nearly impossible to detect in a lab. Here's the part almost nobody gets right when they tell this story. They tested for it. They found nothing. No poison was ever actually detected. Not then, and not in any test run since. The coroner refuses to close the file with a cause. He won't even say whether, if it was poison, he took it himself, or somebody gave it to him. 6 months after he died, someone finally finds a reason to think this wasn't random at all. It's sewn into his trousers. A hidden pocket stitched inside the waistband of his trousers. The kind of pocket you'd only find if you were looking. Inside it, a tiny scrap of paper rolled tight. 2 words, torn from a printed page. Tamám Shud. Persian. It means ended. Finished. The last line of a poem about death. Police put out a public appeal for the book it came from. A man comes forward, Gish. He'd found a copy of that exact poem thrown into the back seat of his unlocked car, parked near the beach, the night the man died. The torn edge matches. Under the same page, still faintly visible 5 lines of handwriting. Capital letters, no spaces, nothing that reads as a sentence in any language anyone can find. A phone number too, penciled faintly on the back cover. Traced eventually to a young nurse living 5 minutes from where the body was found. Military code breakers looked at those 5 lines in 1978. They still couldn't tell you what they say. Nobody ever has. 5 lines. 30-some letters. Australia's own defense cryptographers examine it in 1978 and conclude it's either too short to crack or it isn't a code at all. Just the private shorthand of a troubled mind. Decades of attempts follow. A university team spends years on it and concludes it's probably just the first letters of remembered words. not a cipher built to hide a message, but a private memory aid. As recently as last year, amateur researchers online proposed it's a list of Adelaide train stations. Nobody with any authority over the case has accepted that. Nobody in 77 years has ever produced a solution the case's own investigators accept. While the code sat unsolved, a second clue turned up in a locker across the city, and it told them exactly how carefully this man had planned to disappear. A brown suitcase checked into the Adelaide railway station the day before he died. 6 weeks pass before anyone connects it to him. Inside, a dressing gown, slippers, a shaving kit, and tools. A screwdriver, scissors sharpened to a point, a table knife ground down into something closer to a blade, trousers with sand pressed into the cuffs, a coat stitched in a way only done in America, meaning at some point, this man had been somewhere he had no other record of ever going. Every tag in the suitcase has been removed too, the same as his body, except 3. A tie, a laundry bag, a singlet. All 3 carry the same surname, missed by whoever stripped everything else. That name meant nothing to anyone for 74 years. But another name in the one from the phone number in the book meant something almost immediately. And the woman it belonged to lied about it. Her name is Jessica Thompson, a nurse. She lives 400 meters from the beach where he was found. Police show her the phone number. She says she has no idea why a stranger would have it, and no idea who he is. There's a wrinkle. Years earlier, she'd given a copy of that exact poem to another man, signed with a private inscription. But when police tracked that book down, it's still intact, page for page. It isn't the copy the dead man used. 2 men, 2 matching books. One connection nobody can explain. She asks police to keep her name out of the file. They agree. A decision that will make this case harder to solve for the next 50 years. Years later shown a plaster cast made of the dead man's face. She reportedly can't look at it twice. Decades after that, her own daughter goes on television and says her mother privately admitted she'd lied, that she knew exactly who he was, and that someone above the police knew too. Whatever she knew, she took it to her grave in 2007. It would be 15 more years before anyone else got close to an answer. And the answer came from a place nobody expected. For decades, this case just sits. A death mask made from his face gathers dust in a police museum. In 2011, researchers think they've found him. A name, a face that seems to match, a document from the war. It falls apart. The man they'd found had died 5 years before this case even started. For years, a university professor fights for permission to dig up the grave. He's refused, over and over. The original suitcase is destroyed in a records clear out in 1986. Evidence nobody thought at the time would ever matter again. In 2021, permission finally comes. The grave is opened for the first time since 1949. What they pull from that grave doesn't just identify him. It rewrites almost everything anyone assumed about who he was. In July of 2022, the university team makes an announcement. DNA, hair, and a family tree of 4,000 people point to one man, Carl Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne, born 1905, married once. His wife later described him as withdrawn, and at times violent. He wrote poetry, much of it about death. 3 years before he died, he tried to take his own life. His marriage had already ended by the time he vanished from every record anyone could find. The tags in the suitcase, the ones that read a different surname, belonged to his sister's married family. A real relative, not a mystery, once you know the name. Here's what the announcement did not say, and what almost every headline since has left out. South Australia's own police had not confirmed it. They called themselves cautiously optimistic and said the finding would need to go to a coroner. That was 2022. As of this recording, no coroner has ever issued that ruling. So, the strongest identification this case has ever had. Still officially unconfirmed. And even if the name holds, nobody knows why he was in Adelaide. Nobody knows what killed him. Nobody has ever explained the tag missing from his coat or the code on the back of that book or what, if anything, Jessica Thompson actually knew. 74 years. He finally has a name. He still doesn't have an ending. This is the case of the Somerton man. This is Dark Atlas.